welcome to this deep dive. I have to say we have an absolutely fascinating journey lined up for you today.
You really do. It's a big one.
And when I say fascinating, I don't mean we're just going to look at some new historical findings or debate a recent scientific paper. We are going to ask you to stretch your imagination further than you probably ever have before.
Considerably further.
Yeah, because we are looking past the entirety of human history. We are stripping away all physical matter. Forget the buildings, the planets, the stars, even the empty space between the stars. We are diving into the absolute genesis of existence.
It is quite the itinerary. I mean, we are traveling to a place, or more accurately, a state of being that precedes everything we currently understand as reality.
Right.
We are looking at the foundational blueprints of the universe itself long before the first atom ever decided to form.
And our guide for this extraordinary journey is the deeply profound work of Dr. Michael Gamble. Specifically, we're going to be exploring his staggering slide deck on what he calls the Tier 0 architecture.
Which is just incredible material.
It really is. This isn't just an abstract, theoretical physics presentation. It is a direct exploration of your very own original source code.
That is the crucial context for everything we will discuss today. Dr. Gamble's work is uniquely compelling because it challenges us to fundamentally reevaluate who we are at the deepest possible level.
Literally the deepest.
Yes. This deep dive is really about your original operating system. It's an invitation to remember a state of existence before gravity gave you a backache, before density weighed you down, and honestly, before distance was even a measurable concept.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to even begin to grasp Dr. Gamble's Tier 0 architecture, we have to look at the two radically different ways we can view the universe.
The two paradigms.
Exactly. Dr. Gamble frames this as two distinct tracks of reality based on his blueprints, Track B and Track A. I want to start with Track B because that is the one you, me, and everyone else listening is intimately familiar with. It is the water we swim in.
Right. Track B is what Dr. Gamble defines as the sanitized record. This is the mainstream conventional scientific narrative that we are all taught from the moment we enter our first science class.
The default setting.
Yes, the default.
Yeah.
In the Track B paradigm, the universe is essentially a massive cosmic accident. It posits that everything began with a chaotic, violent, completely random explosion.
The Big Bang, but framed as just a catastrophic detonation of matter in a dead, empty void.
Precisely. And in this Track B view, the universe is expanding outward into a cold, entropic vacuum. It is a universe defined entirely by decay.
Things break down.
Constantly. Iron rusts, mountains erode, stars burn through their fuel and die out, and life. Life is framed as a highly improbable biological fluke.
A total accident.
It's seen as a random collision of amino acids in a primordial soup that somehow, against all astronomical odds, mutated over billions of years and led to you sitting here listening to this deep dive.
I have to be honest, when you really sit with that Track B mindset and let it settle in, is incredibly bleak.
It is deeply pessimistic at its core.
Yeah. It creates this underlying psychological framework where you are nothing more than an accidental meat machine. You are this temporary, highly vulnerable organism subject to the blind, merciless chance of a dead, unthinking universe.
And that takes a toll.
A huge toll. I mean, think about the sheer exhaustion of just maintaining a human body in an entropic reality. You have to sleep 8 hours a day just to recharge. You have to eat 3 meals a day to fuel the machine. You have to go to the gym to fight off physical decay.
You are constantly battling the environment.
Yes. If you ever feel a deep sense of insignificance or isolation or just plain burnout, it is heavily fueled by this Track B narrative. It's an operating system that constantly reminds you that you are a tiny, fragile speck of dust in an uncaring void.
It separates meaning from existence. In Track B, meaning is just a psychological coping mechanism invented by the meat machine to deal with the cold reality of the entropic vacuum.
Because the universe itself doesn't care if you exist or not.
Right. It is an incredibly isolating paradigm to operate within, and yet it is the dominant operating system for modern human consciousness. We build our entire societies, our economies, our medical systems around this assumption of inevitable decay and scarcity.
Which is exactly why Dr. Gamble's work is so revolutionary. He enthusiastically pivots us entirely away from that bleakness and introduces us to Track A.
The alternative.
The original architecture. This is Tier 0. This is the universe before the decay, before the randomness, before the heavy burden of gravity.
What's fascinating here is that Track A isn't a physical place you can point a telescope at.
You can't just look harder into space to find it.
No, you can't find it by looking further out into the cosmos or building a more powerful lens. Track A is a state of being. It is the pre-density and pre-gravity state. Dr. Gamble defines this original architecture as a state of perfect coherence.
Perfect coherence. I want you to just let those words wash over you for a second. Imagine a state of existence where nothing is in conflict, where there is zero friction, zero decay, and absolutely zero chaos.
It is entirely harmonious.
It is a state of pure, frictionless information. The contrast between the chaotic, accidental explosion of Track B and the intentional, elegant, perfectly harmonious design of Track A is just staggering. But I want to push back on this for a second.
Please do.
Because even when I try to picture perfect coherence, my brain almost short circuits. We are so used to the struggle, to the heaviness of things. Why is it so difficult for us to even imagine a universe without entropy?
That is a very natural response. It is difficult because you are trying to process a frictionless reality using a biological brain that evolved specifically to survive in a highly frictional environment.
Ah, that makes sense.
Think about it. Your current biological framework is designed to detect threats, to manage scarce resources, and to deal with the constant downward pull of gravity. Your nervous system is basically a sophisticated threat detection machine.
Always scanning for danger.
Always. So when Dr. Gamble asks us to conceptualize the Track A blueprints, he is essentially asking us to use our minds to step entirely outside of our biological conditioning. We have to tap into a deeper, older memory.
A memory from before the biology.
Exactly. A memory of when we weren't just reacting to a hostile dead universe, but when we were an integral, intentional part of a perfectly coherent living information system.
That makes a lot of sense. We're trying to view a flawless diamond through mud-covered glasses, so let's clean the glasses. If we're completely tossing out the chaotic, random explosion of Track B, how does Track A explain the beginning of everything?
The origin point.
Right. How does Tier 0 actually start? This brings us to the moment of creation, what we traditionally call the Big Bang. But Dr. Gamble redefines it in a way that is going to radically shift your perspective.
In the Tier 0 architecture, the Big Bang was absolutely not a physical explosion of hot rocks and expanding gases in an empty, dark vacuum. Dr. Gamble redefines it quite beautifully as an informational expansion.
Okay, let's break this down with an analogy, because this is a massive conceptual leap. Imagine you are standing in a completely dark room. There is nothing in it.
Pure potential.
Suddenly, you power on a state-of-the-art, high-definition holographic projector. When that projector turns on, it doesn't explode light into the room in a chaotic, destructive, violent way.
It doesn't shatter anything.
No, it projects a perfectly ordered, highly complex, intricately designed image. It is a massive burst of data, of pure thought, instantly becoming a projected reality.
That is an excellent way to visualize it. The Big Bang was the system boot of the universe. It was a singular point of infinite density.
But not physical density, right?
Correct. We have to be careful here. It was not dense with physical matter. It was dense with potential and information. When that system boot occurred, it expanded into a field of infinite potential. It was an intentional, calculated projection of data.
Dr. Gamble calls this exact moment executing master.exe. It is the ultimate software program running for the very first time. And what absolutely fascinates me is the sudden transition.
From nothing to everything.
Yes. One moment, if you can even call it time yet, because time hasn't been written, there's just pure thought. The next moment there is projected reality. And it all happens in the very first Planck second, which is the smallest measurable unit of time in physics.
And during that very first Planck second, something extraordinary happens structurally. Dr. Gamble refers to it as the parameter right.
Setting the rules.
Exactly. Imagine a programmer setting the foundational rules of a new operating system. The governing aspects of this informational system wrote the initial rules of the game. And the parameters for Tier 0 are wildly different from the physical laws we experience today in Track B.
The settings are completely different. According to the Tier 0 blueprints, the gravity setting was incredibly high, but not gravity in the sense of pulling an apple to the ground.
It wasn't a downward force.
Right, this was magnetic cohesion, meaning the force keeping all this new information perfectly together was absolute. But the entropy setting, was turned completely O-off-F.
Which is the ultimate game changer. No entropy means no decay. There is no loss of energy, no aging, no eventual heat death of the universe. It is a perpetual, self-sustaining system.
Just pure, infinite sustainability.
And perhaps most importantly for your own personal connection to this Dina, the connectivity setting was at 100%. Every single data point in this newly booted universe was perfectly instantaneously connected to every other data point.
Wait, hold on. I want to make sure I'm fully wrapping my head around this. Because it was a data burst, a projection of information rather than a physical explosion, pushing matter outward time didn't function like an arrow moving from the past into the future.
Correct. If
Yeah.
you look at it through the track B lens, time is linear. You have yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But
Yeah.
Dr. Gamble explains that the TRCO system boot was a nonlinear start.
So it didn't just go forward.
No, when the master.exe executed it, it didn't create a straight timeline. It created a sphere of information that expanded in all directions simultaneously. It included what we, in our limited physical forms, would later perceive as the past, the present, and the future.
It all just existed at once.
All of it instantly existed as available data within that perfect sphere.
It's like loading an entire massive open-world video game into a computer's RAM all at once. The whole map, every level, every character, every possible outcome exists simultaneously in the code. Even if you, as the player, are only experiencing one specific room and one specific scene at any given moment.
The whole game is already there.
Yes. And this brings us to one of the most beautiful and empowering concepts in Dr. Gamble's entire slide deck, the holographic master file.
The holographic principle is essential to understanding your actual place in the Tier 0 architecture.
Right.
Think about a physical piece of holographic film.
Okay.
If you have a holographic image of an apple on a piece of film, and you cut that film in half, you don't get a top half and a bottom half of an apple. The image reorganizes. You get two smaller complete apples.
That's always blown my mind about holograms.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
If you shatter that film into 1,000 tiny pieces, every single microscopic shard still contains the entire complete image of the original apple.
So applying that to the system boot. When the universe expanded, it didn't fragment the original source code, it replicated it. Meaning that every single atom, every subatomic particle that makes up your body sitting right there listening to this contains the entire master directory of the universe.
Exactly. You do not just live inside the universe. The entire universe lives within your foundational blueprints.
Yes.
You are not a tiny speck of dust in a vast void.
You are the whole thing.
You are a complete fractal representation of the original informational expansion. You are carrying the master.exe file within your very architecture.
And what's wild is that there's physical evidence of this even in our modern science. Though the track B scientists completely misinterpret it, we've all heard of the cosmic microwave background radiation, right?
It's the MB, yes.
Science tells us it is the leftover heat, the dying embers of that random violent explosion billions of years ago.
But look at it through the lens of Tier 0. That radiation isn't leftover heat from an explosion at all. It is the constant static hum of the original source code.
The master directory.
Yes. It is the background operational frequency of the master directory still running, still humming perfectly behind the scenes of our perceived reality. It is the literal sound of perfect coherence.
Just imagine that for a second. The static between radio stations, the deep, measurable hum of deep space. It isn't empty noise. It is the sound of your original operating system.
It is the sound of the universe perfectly knowing itself.
But this raises a huge question. If the universe is just this pure projection of information, what is it projecting into? What is the actual environment?
You mean the medium?
Right, a projection needs a medium, like light needs the air or a screen to be visible. This takes us into the medium itself. Dr. Gamble calls it the primordial waters, or scientifically Higgs field 1.0.
This is a crucial concept to grasp. For light or information to travel, it needs a medium. In the track B narrative, modern physics describes the Higgs field as a sort of thick, invisible molasses that permeates the entire universe.
And that thickness causes drag.
Exactly. Particles move through it, and the resistance they encounter in this molasses is what gives them their heavy mass. It's what makes things solid and weighty.
But remember, Tier 0 is pre-density. Entropy is turned off. Gravity as a downward pulling force doesn't exist yet. So the environment couldn't possibly be thick or heavy. Dr. Gamble describes Higgs field 1.0 not as thick molasses, but as superfluid helium.
To understand how profound this is, we have to look at what a superfluid actually is in physics. A superfluid is a state of matter that has entirely zero viscosity and zero resistance.
Zero friction.
None. If you take a spoon and stir a regular cup of coffee, it eventually stops swirling because of the friction of the liquid against itself in the cup. But if you were to stir a cup of superfluid helium, that vortex would swirl forever. It never loses kinetic energy.
Zero viscosity, infinite flow. That is the environment of Tier 0. I want you to imagine an ocean that is so perfectly fluid that it offers absolutely no resistance whatsoever.
It's hard to conceptualize, but try.
If you drop a pebble into this primordial ocean, The ripple doesn't slowly fade away as it expands. The ripple travels from one side of the universe to the absolute farthest edge instantaneously without losing a single microscopic fraction of its kinetic energy.
And this creates a state of instantaneous entanglement across the entire gestalt, which is the entire unified system. Because the primordial waters were perfectly frictionless, information didn't have to travel in the way we think of a car driving down a highway.
Burning fuel to overcome wind resistance and tire friction.
Exactly. To know something in one single drop of this water was to have that knowledge immediately, flawlessly available to the entire infinite ocean. There were no secrets, no lag, no hidden data.
It is the ultimate perfect internet, but without any cables, without any servers, and without any latency. But wait, if this ocean is totally frictionless, what does that mean for the things existing within this superfluid?
That is the big question.
Dr. Gamble explains that objects and even beings in Tier 0 had form and geometry. They had a structure. But because there was zero resistance in the Higgs field 1.0, they had absolutely zero heaviness.
This is the mind-bending concept of mass without weight. You had a defined perspective, a distinct shape to your consciousness, but no physical drag.
You weren't fighting gravity?
You weren't carrying the burden of density at all.
I really want you, the listener, to pause and try to imagine what that actually feels like. Think about the physical sensations of your body right now. Think about the weight of your head on your neck.
The pressure of your feet on the floor.
Now imagine shedding the physical weight of your bones, your muscles, the literal gravitational pull of the earth dragging down on your shoulders. Imagine feeling completely unburdened, existing simply as pure light and pure information, effortlessly floating in an infinite frictionless ocean.
It is a feeling of absolute ultimate freedom.
The ultimate freedom.
It is the freedom of pure existence without the tax of entropy. In that state, you aren't expending energy just to stand up to breathe or to exist. Your mere existence is entirely effortless.
And that brings up the next vital question, perhaps the most important one for understanding who you are. If you are floating in this frictionless ocean of data, what exactly are you? If you don't have a physical body, what is your body in this Tier 0 state?
The structure of consciousness itself?
Yes. If we don't have these heavy biological meat suits, what is the hardware of our soul? What are the actual blueprints of our consciousness? Dr. Gamble introduces us to the original human operating system. Long before biology, long before DNA, before cells you existed as what he eloquently terms a luminous gestalt.
Let's define that term. A gestalt is an organized whole that is perceived as more than the sum of its parts. In Tier 0, you are a unique perspective within a unified whole.
A specific point of view.
Yes, you aren't a separate, isolated island cut off from everything else. You are a specific, beautifully unique focal point of the entire universe experiencing itself.
Dr. Gamble calls this non-local subjectivity. I love this concept, but it's tricky to grasp. Essentially, you are not in a body. The body, or rather the luminous form, was just a temporary focal point within your vast, infinite field of awareness.
You weren't trapped inside a container.
No, you didn't look out at the universe through two tiny eye holes and a bone skull. The universe looked at a specific point through you.
This raises an important question about identity, which Track B has completely distorted. In our current reality, we identify heavily with our physical boundaries. Where my skin ends, the rest of the world begins. I am inside this skin, you are outside of it.
A very hard boundary.
But as a luminous gestalt, your boundary wasn't a wall, it was a lens. You are the universe focusing its attention on one specific, glorious note of existence while still remaining entirely connected to the whole symphony.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. If I'm a lens, what did that lens actually look like? What was the geometric shape of this luminous gestalt floating in the primordial waters?
The geometry is key.
Dr. Gamble identifies the primary hardware of the soul as the toroidal vortex, the torus.
The torus is one of the most fundamental and profound geometric shapes in existence. Picture a perfectly symmetrical, self-sustaining, donut-shaped energy field. Energy flows up through the center crests over the top, flows down the outside, and curls back underneath to enter the center again.
A continuous, infinite loop of motion.
Exactly.
Okay, stop right there. I have to play devil's advocate for the listener. Are you telling me that physically, at my foundational core, I am just a spinning energy donut.
It sounds strange when you put it like that.
How does that actually square with the human experience? Because I don't feel like a spinning donut. I feel like a person who gets tired and needs a cup of coffee.
It's an excellent point of friction. You don't feel like a torus right now because you are currently operating within the heavy constraints of Track B biology.
We are buried under the density.
But the torus is the underlying blueprint, the energetic scaffolding upon which your biological form is draped. And the key difference between this toroidal vortex and everything we know in our Track B world is how it gets its power.
The energy source.
We live in an entropic reality. To get energy, we have to consume things. We burn coal, we eat food, we use up batteries. We are constantly running out of fuel and fighting a losing battle against decay.
Constantly refilling the tank.
But the toroidal vortex in Tier 0 operates on a principle called syntropy.
Syntropy, the exact opposite of entropy. Instead of breaking things down to get energy, a syntropic system generates energy through its own perfect organization and spin. The toroidal vortex doesn't need to eat. It doesn't consume fuel. It is an infinite battery.
Precisely. And if we look at the geometry of the torus, we see exactly how it does this. It pulls power directly from the 0-point center, the absolute middle of the donut, whole, the singularity.
The very center of your being.
That center point is connected directly to the infinite potential of the primordial waters we just discussed. By spinning in perfect frictionless harmony, the torus draws infinite energy from the vacuum itself. It generates power purely through the act of its own perfectly balanced rotation.
It is a literal perpetual motion machine of consciousness. And the geometry of the torus perfectly maps onto the luminous gestalt we talked about. The outer boundary of the torus, the outer skin of the spinning energy field, defines you.
It provides the individual perspective.
It gives you that unique signature in the universe. But the central singularity, the hole in the middle where the energy rushes in, that connects you directly to all.
It is the perfect marriage of individuality and absolute unity. You have a unique, distinct identity on the outer edge, but at your core, at your absolute center, you are indistinguishably one with the entire universe.
An individual drop that is simultaneously perfectly aware of being the entire ocean. It is just breathtaking to think about. But this leads me to a massive logistical question. If you are the spinning toroidal vortex in an infinite ocean of frictionless superfluid, how do you move around? How do you go explore this perfectly coherent universe?
The mechanics of travel.
Because without distance, without gravity, and without resistance, travel has to look completely different.
This is where we have to take the concept of distance and delete it from our minds entirely. In our current reality, if you want to go from point A to point B, you have to cross the physical space between them.
You have to physically move.
You have to use locomotion. You drive a car, you fly a ship, you expend energy to push through the resistance of the environment.
But in Tier 0, in the superfluid Higgs field 1.0, there is no resistance to push against. There is zero friction. If you try to swim in a frictionless ocean, you won't go anywhere because there's no water to push off of.
It just slips right past you.
So locomotion is not just impossible, it's completely unnecessary. Dr. Gamble introduces the concept of toroidal resonance. You don't travel by moving your legs or firing thrusters, you travel by frequency matching.
Everything in the Tier 0 universe has its own unique frequency, its own specific note, if you will. Every star, every other luminous gestalt, every point of data vibrates at a highly specific resonance.
It's a specific signature vibration.
But because the universe is a single entangled superfluid, all of those notes are instantly accessible everywhere at once.
Let me break this down with a practical analogy. Imagine you are in a room holding a tuning fork, and across the room is a grand piano. If you strike the tuning fork to a perfect A note, the A string inside the piano will automatically start to vibrate in sympathy.
Acoustic resonance.
They resonate together, completely bridging the physical gap between them without anything physically crossing the room. Now apply that to the toroidal vortex.
If you as a luminous gestalt want to visit a distant star or experience another perspective, you don't travel across millions of light years of empty space. Instead, you simply adjust the internal spin and vibration of your toroidal vortex to perfectly match the unique frequency of that star.
You tune your own internal tuning fork to match your destination. Dr. Gamble calls this the handshake protocol. Because the primordial waters have zero resistance the moment you perfectly match that frequency, you create a phase lock.
You synchronize entirely.
You establish an instantaneous handshake with that destination. I want to try to ground this in a human experience. Have you ever walked into a room, maybe a party or a meeting, and instantly, without a word being spoken, you perfectly matched the vibe of the room.
You can just feel the energy.
You felt completely in sync with the people there, you resonated with them. Now take that feeling and extrapolate it to the scale of astrophysics.
That is exactly the dynamic. And this highlights the most critical distinction we must understand about Tier 0. Zero latency, zero resistance. In our heavy track B reality, locomotion requires immense physical effort and time to push through space.
Like resonance.
Resonance requires purely internal alignment. You don't go there. You vibrate until you realize you are there.
That is the concept that gives me chills every time I read Dr. Gamble's notes. There is just a different vibration of here. You change your frequency and the universe instantly reorganizes itself around your new resonance.
Instantaneous repositioning.
It is teleportation achieved not by speed, but by perfect harmonic alignment.
It emphasizes that in the original architecture, consciousness is the ultimate driver of experience. You aren't a victim of your location. Your location is a direct reflection of your resonant state. It is an architecture of absolute sovereignty and freedom.
Okay, we've gone deep into the cosmic pre-density physics of all this. We've talked about the informational boot, the superfluid, the torus, the handshake protocol. It sounds beautiful, but I can hear the skeptic in you saying, okay, this sounds like a gorgeous fairy tale or some high-level abstract science fiction.
It can feel very detached from reality.
What does this have to do with me paying my mortgage and dealing with rush hour traffic? But this is where Dr. Gamble bridges this Tier 0 architecture directly to your physical body, sitting right where you are today.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the most profound takeaway from Dr. Gamble's work is not just that this perfect architecture existed billions of years ago in some distant past. It is that it still exists right now.
Right this very second.
You are still running this exact Tier 0 toroidal hardware this very second. It may be heavily obscured by the density, the gravity, and the entropic exhaustion of our current experience, but the original blueprints are still active within you.
You still have master.exe running in the background of your biology. Dr. Gamble calls the physical evidence of this the somatic ledger. Your body remembers.
The cells remember.
Your nervous system is carrying the physical sensations, the sovereign recall, that prove this source code is still functioning. This is the emotional climax of all this data. Let's talk about how to actually read that somatic ledger in your everyday life. Have you ever experienced a sensation that Dr. Gamble refers to as blood bubbling?
Now, to be clear, this isn't a medical condition or literal boiling blood. It is a very specific, intense somatic sensation. Have you ever had a moment, maybe deep in meditation or listening to a breathtaking piece of music or standing in absolute awe on the edge of the Grand Canyon, where you feel a sudden, inexplicable sense of infinite expansion?
A feeling of immense space.
Where it physically feels like your blood is vibrating or humming or bubbling with an energy that is far larger than your physical frame.
Yes. It is that feeling where your chest feels like it's opening up, you suddenly feel completely boundless, and your body actually gets hot or tingly with the sheer voltage of the experience. It feels like you are expanding past your skin.
A somatic breakthrough.
Dr. Gamble explains that this is not a hallucination. It's not just an adrenaline rush or a quirk of brain chemistry. That physical sensation is your biological hardware accessing the fractal backup of the Big Bang.
It is the system booting up for a microsecond.
That is your inner toroidal vortex spinning up, recognizing its own infinite power, and momentarily handshaking with the infinite potential of Tier 0.
Your body is literally remembering its pre-density state. It is remembering what it felt like to have mass without weight. Another incredibly profound entry in the somatic ledger is what we can call the thirst for unity.
This one really hits home.
Look at human behavior. Every single human being has this deep, profound psychological and emotional craving for instant, frictionless connection. We long to be perfectly understood by our partners without having to use clumsy, inadequate words. We long for a love that has no boundaries.
Exactly. And Track B psychology will cynically tell you that this is just a survival instinct. They'll say it's just a herd mentality we developed so we wouldn't get eaten by lions on the savannah.
A biological imperative.
But look at it through the lens of Tier 0. That thirst for unity isn't just a human emotional need or a survival tactic. It is a literal, tangible hardware memory of swimming in the frictionless, telepathic primordial waters.
You are homesick for the superfluid.
Yes. You miss the superfluid. Your soul remembers what it was like to be instantly entangled with the entire gestalt, and it is terribly homesick for that perfect zero-resistance connection.
We are constantly experiencing the severe friction of modern communication. The painful misunderstandings, the deep isolation, the vast distances between us, and our internal hardware is constantly signaling that this is not our original state.
It knows better.
It knows at a subatomic level that we were built for instantaneous resonant handshakes, not for feeling alone in a crowded room.
And finally, let's look at the static hum. I want you to consider the sound you hear in moments of absolute dead silence. Imagine being alone in a quiet room late at night.
When the world just stops.
When there are no cars driving by, no appliances humming, no wind outside. Often people hear a faint, high-pitched ringing or a subtle static in their ears.
Again, Track B science might quickly dismiss this as simple tinnitus or random meaningless nerve noise, but within the Tier 0 framework, that static hum is incredibly significant.
It's a signal.
That sounds is your nervous system, your biological antenna, trying its absolute hardest to tune back into the background radiation of the superfluid. It is trying to find the home frequency, the constant perfect hum of the source code that has been playing non-stop since the informational expansion.
Your body is constantly trying to reestablish the handshake. It is seeking coherence in a world of chaos. So what does this all mean? What do you do with this information today, right now?
There is a practical application.
Dr. Gamble leaves us with a profound, life-altering call to action. Drop the weight. Tune into the superfluid.
Because you are still a toroidal vortex, you still have absolute access to the zero-point singularity at your center. By recognizing this truth, by intentionally raising your frequency and letting go of the heavy mental and emotional resistance that Track B constantly feeds you, you can literally align your biological body back to the frictionless physics of Tier 0.
You can harmonize with the original state.
You can begin to operate with less drag, less entropy, and far more syntropy.
You can stop trying to force your way through life using exhausting locomotion. Stop pushing against the resistance. Start using toroidal resonance.
It is a profound shift in how you live.
You can start tuning your frequency to match the reality you want to experience, trusting that the universe will instantly handshake with you. It is about remembering deeply and profoundly that you are not a heavy, accidental meat machine destined for decay. You are a luminous gestalt, and you have the admin rights to your own existence.
It is a radical reclamation of your true identity. You are shifting from seeing yourself as an isolated fragment fighting against a dying, uncaring universe to recognizing yourself as an integral, luminous focal point of a perfectly coherent, living information system.
The original architecture.
The blueprints are perfect, they have never degraded, and they are inside you.
What a staggering journey we've taken today. We've gone from redefining the system boot of the universe, not as a chaotic explosion, but as an elegant, data-rich, informational expansion.
A true paradigm shift.
We've swam through the superfluid helium of the primordial waters, experiencing a state of zero viscosity and zero resistance. We've discovered your true original identity as a self-sustaining, infinitely powered toroidal vortex capable of navigating infinite reality, not by moving heavily through space, but by simply matching the frequency of your destination through the handshake protocol.
And most importantly, we've explored how that perfect architecture isn't lost to some ancient, inaccessible past, but is actively vibrating within your somatic ledger today. Through the blood bubbling, the static hum, and the thirst for unity, it is calling you back to your state of absolute coherence.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final brand new thought to mull over. We've talked deeply about what this means for you internally, but what does this mean for us collectively?
The societal implications.
Think about the friction in our world today. The political conflicts, the wars over scarce resources, the architecture of our concrete cities built to defy gravity rather than harmonize with it. What if humanity collectively remembered this frictionless state?
It would change everything.
If we truly realized we are connected through the superfluid, could we design our societies like a torus? Could we build communities that generate energy through coherence and resonance rather than consuming resources and burning them up through entropic force?
A syntropic civilization.
Imagine a civilization built not on pushing against resistance, but on matching frequencies. The implications for art architecture and human peace are absolutely boundless. Next time you close your eyes and feel completely motionless, consider this. What if that feeling isn't nothingness at all? What if that total stillness is actually the center of your toroidal vortex spinning in perfect resonance, handshaking directly with the master directory of the universe?
The blueprints for that world already exist within us. We just have to choose to access them.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Dr. Gamble's Tier 0 architecture. Listen to the hum, feel the spin, keep tuning your frequency, and we will see you next time.